you use can sin, and you don't look like sinners to me. And I often wish that I didn't agree to stick to this topic. I'm afraid someone in the congregation will take it personally. And actually, I'm doing this from experience in talking about having the congregations in the district. So please don't feel threatened by it. To prepare for a topic like sin means looking at the many sources, and the web has mostly Judeo-Christian sources, and some sources from Buddhism, Zoroastrian, Judeo-Christian sources, and they tell us that the wages of sin are death for those. However, Buddhism and Hinduism and Sikhism tells us something much more hopeful. And it was a reply to people who criticized Hinduism, for example. We are getting many Hindus in our area. I don't know whether you know that or not. The county which I come from, Brevard, has at least 3,000 Hindus in it. And in writing about replying to some Christian ideas about being condemned for sins or rewarded for goodness is after just one life. And the Hindu argument is that this is a much more reasonable way to believe that you have many lifetimes to make up for what you did or didn't do in the past. Most religions give us definite instructions on what may be called sins. In ancient Hebrew times, sins could do with ritual defiling of the temple or other holy sites. Islam adds other sins that have similar origins to the list of actions. Some that are advised, permitted, not approved but not forbidden, and condemned. That's quite a symphony of what can be done and what could be not done, and even some things that are not approved, like divorce, are allowed. Above all, most religions have some basic beliefs. Do not murder, do not steal, do not engage in illicit sexual behavior, do not lie or swear, and for many this might even include gossip. Buddhism adds do not partake of mind-altering substances and forbids killing of any animal products. That's quite different than other places. I don't know of any others that talk about mind-altering drugs or alcohol or things of that nature. One sect in the Orient will not even eat any vegetables or fruit that kills the entire plant. Now, when I taught students, that sort of got to them. Yes, you can eat an apple, but not a carrot. And this is very serious. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have the same basic rules, but that doesn't add reference to God. The other ones don't. The first ones in Judaism and in Christianity are the Ten Commandments. And the Ten Commandments today are interpreted much differently than they were in the times when they were written, probably about 1000 BC. The first one is used to tell us that we can worship only one God. Now, this comes from a time when people, including the people who became Jews, believed that there were many gods, but only Yahweh is our God. Just listen to what the first commandment says. I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not have strange gods before me. Strange gods don't mean with pierced ears, or pierced nostrils, or pierced whatever. It meant foreign gods. There it is right there. I am your God, I will take care of you, you will follow me, and no other gods. That puts quite a different character to these ancient words. We've all had contact with the Ten Commandments. We know that the first four of them deal with Yahweh, the God who has to be worshipped. Thou shalt not commit adultery, for example, in the Ten Commandments, means not what it sounds like on the beginning. Part of it has to do and includes fornication with a daughter. And the reason for this is that a daughter who has been defiled has less of a bridal price than one that didn't. Thou shalt not kill was a misinterpretation in the King James Version too, because we all know that governments kill people. We know that there were many reasons, even in Jewish times, for people to be executed. The term should have been murdered, and that meant we will not murder any of our own people, or we will not murder criminals. The Old Testament is called the Tanakh in Hebrew because they do not recognize a New Testament. This is a sort of a exaggerated pride on the part of Christians that the Old Testament is the Old Testament. Now we have a new way of living and being. I don't know any place where sexual activities between unmarried people is forbidden. However, it comes close to the same code as adultery as I just mentioned. Today, it's very common for people to be living together without the benefit of marriage. I know, for example, of several mature people who are living together after a divorce or maybe after being widowed, and they do it for very practical reasons. Sometimes there's an insurance policy from the person who has died, has left, that will expire if the person remarries. And sometimes there are other reasons, and they are very complicated. But we know that not most, I can't speak for everybody, but I was very aware when teaching in community college that those students who weren't living at home were living together in what used to be called sin. It's not remarkable at all today. It's quite common. There are religious groups that describe what are traditional sins or activities. I've been informed by some who were left other religions to join us that they were denounced from the pulpit of the religion they left, and they were told that they were going to burn in hell unless they returned. They really didn't seem worried. And there are other religions that build barriers to doubting. I remember once as a young Catholic boy going to confession and said, "I doubted." And the priest said, "How many times?" What can I say to that? Was that not intimidation? You can't doubt. And here we even have one of our hymns that begin, "To doubt is an answer." Imagine the coercion that involved in that, particularly with young adolescents or younger children. We RUUs are in a peculiar situation. In a certain sense, we are free to determine what is sin for us. Many of us reject traditional morality, particularly in the areas of sexual conduct. We're like everybody else in the country, I guess. Yes, we reject adultery in most cases, and many of us reject the traditional Ten Commandments, particularly the first four that deal with the duty to an ancient God of the Hebrews. In the Ten Commandments, where it's them the light of today, which I have already done with several, you would find that they do not stand up to modern life. For example, the one about "thou shalt not steal." The story of Moses. Moses has come to Pharaoh for the last time to tell him that there will be a disaster unless he lets the Hebrew children leave Egypt. And one of the things Moses commands is, "Go and take all the gold and silver from the Egyptians." It's there, it's written down. Go and steal everything you can from the Egyptians. In this case, it was okay, they needed it. Well, what are the things that we are demanding of ourselves? And first of all, I have to tell you a short story. There was once a minister who decided he didn't want to be a minister anymore, and he wanted to be a policeman. And as part of the training, he was asked, or she was asked, I don't know which, what would you do if you were alone in a crowd and surrounded by people who are hostile? And the answer was, take a collection. Get that over with now. But one of the things that's very important for us, and I can tell by looking around and how many people here and what we're doing, is supporting our congregations. That it's extremely important, not just monetarily, but not least monetarily, but with camaraderie and with compassion for each other. We're not giving to some outside source. We're not giving to a diocese. We're giving to ourselves when we do this. And we have a long, tough battle ahead of us to convince other people that we have something for people to listen to and to believe. This is a very great strength we have. And I will tell you personally that in a congregation this size, it is remarkable. And when I come to a congregation this size, I'm always reminded that the first Unitarians met in groups smaller than this in Italy until they ran out and had to put a pole in to be safe for a while. So this is just the beginning. We give enough of ourselves and our fortune to keep our societies going. Another area which we need is helping those of us who are in various difficulties, illnesses, poverty, and recent widowhood. One of the things I think of that many of our congregations are lacking is a team or a group of people for widows, recent widows. It's a very difficult time. Traditionally, or in traditional times, men took care of the accounting and the fortunes of the couple. And women especially who are of that age are not prepared. They have to have help with Social Security. They have to have help with finding out how much money they have. They have to have help with insurance. And we need to have a group who are experienced in this to come to the aid of a widow who needs it as soon as possible. Being aware of the confidence in dealing with people is another thing that is a problem. Most of our communities have a group of helpers of some kind. Some have what they call a helping committee. And this committee goes around looking for people, or is referred to people who are having difficulties of some kind. Very often it's people who are elderly and maybe having financial difficulties who don't have enough to eat. And one of the difficulties some people have on these committees is they can't keep their mouths shut. I was really upset a number of weeks ago at one place during show and tell, not show and tell, that's the wrong word. At any rate, where we tell what's good and what's bad, and one person said, we have just brought over 3 meals to so-and-so, and they were very grateful for it. I felt that was a terrible breach of confidentiality for someone who needed attention to say, ain't I nice? And this is not frequent, but when it comes out that everybody knows about a particular person's problem, everybody who's sworn to secrecy or confidentiality have betrayed that trust. Finding financial support for congregational members who are really in difficulty is a really serious problem, especially when it's long run. Now we can do what we can in advising, in trying to help with a new budget, and sometimes it's very difficult for that, and we have to help for public assistance in some way that people may not be aware of that they're entitled to. But many congregations have something congregations with ministers, and that's only about half of the congregations in the state. Congregations with ministers have what's called a minister's discretionary fund. And discretionary means discretionary. A certain amount is put in an account, and when a difficulty arises, the minister writes a check and hands it to them. If it might be someone from out of the congregation, it's up to the minister to decide who will be assisted or not. When I had this duty for people who would call from outside, I would go and get them a card from one of the, not Publix generally, but from Walmart, because they shopped at Walmart, and gave it to them discretionary. Sometimes I had to go and meet them at a store or something because they only had a bicycle. But anyway, the point is that there are situations that occur sometimes very briefly, sometimes a difficult time in life. And a congregation without a minister would have a committee that dealt with this and had a fund. And discretionary means you don't tell anybody. Small congregations can have groups that do this, find out where help is needed, and give it out as necessary. That does not mean long-term assistance, because that may mean other agencies are involved. But that's a place where we can do it. If we don't do it, it's a shame. I didn't say sin, did I? It's easy to forget members who died. And in a new congregation like this, I hope there are not many, but we all do die. And sometimes we forget, after just a few times, people who have done something very important for our congregations, founding them, supporting them, both in effort and in money. And it seems to me to be very important to list these people in some sort of an honor roll or some kind of respectful plaque somewhere, and remember them. And perhaps maybe once a year have a memorial services, or have memorial services for people who have gone before us, for people who have made contributions. Another place that comes up to my mind is gossip. I know none of you gossip. Every church has gossips. One of the most interesting, or not quite interesting, and not just one, I have been around and consulted with people who were recently widowed. And the person recently widowed moved in with another individual. Think about that for just a minute, because I know more than one case. And people were saying, I can't go very well from the microphone here, but they were talking about how awful this is. On the other hand, they didn't know the situations that managed this. Sometimes the person who died was not able to be a husband or wife in the traditional terms, and were very difficult in the pain they were in, engaged in other lives, and it was not unusual to look for other companionships. I have a very good friend who got married 30 days after he was widowed, and he said, I can't live by myself. And he told me recently that if his current wife died, he would have to find other companionship. I don't recommend it, I don't condemn it. But it's very easy to condemn something about which we know very little. And in one particular case, again, this was a man whose wife had been incapacitated for many years, and she was very demeaning to him. And part of their demeaning, she put him down in front of people. She made a fool out of him when she could. She yelled at him in public. And she also insisted, though, that they visit other people who were sick or ill. And in doing so, the gentleman in this got attached to someone else. It was not a surprise to me that 2 months after the demise of the previous partner, he moved in with somebody else and got married to that person a year later. So there is no right or wrong in these, but before making judgments, make sure you know everything that's involved. And in the cases I just told you about, you'll never make sure. It's not possible. Judging the activities of other people is very difficult. And I remember, I never quote Catholic Pope, but the present one said when he was asked about gays and lesbians, "Who am I to judge?" That's an interesting question, because many of the kinds of things we judge about are for people who believe in God, between the individual and God, not between the individual and the community. And this is very important. And particularly for the head of a church that is not known for making judgments, for not making judgments. It makes many judgments and laws. And this is a very humbling thing for a man of this character to do that, or this authority to do this. I think if there's anything we should hang up in our churches, that's quite it. Who am I to judge? And now I've hung out my wash, and if you have anything to say, I understand you have 2 ways of handling it after the service. Would you like to tell us?
Yes. Reverend Higgins has agreed to a talkback which will happen in the fellowship hall. So after the service, if you would like to, quick like a bunny, get your coffee and your cookies, and you can meet with him toward the rear at one of the tables there. And he is welcome. He has been wonderful.
And if you feel like standing up in front of the congregation and confessing your sins, do it in the ladies' room or the men's room or something. Or if you really are that interested in getting this off your souls, forget it. Thank you.